The world's most mysterious peaks were not shaped by nature. They are colossal monuments built by human hands, standing as testaments to forgotten ambitions and sacred beliefs. We are about to journey across the globe to explore 50 of these incredible artificial mountains. You will discover the hidden chambers inside ancient pyramids and the secrets buried within vast earthen mounds. Why would cultures separated by oceans all feel the same primal urge to build their own mountains? And what profound truths did they bury within them? What single human drive do you think connects all these monumental creations? The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the ultimate archetype of an artificial mountain. Its original form was nothing like the rough, stepped silhouette we see today. It was once sheathed in highly polished Chora limestone, creating a facade so brilliantly white it would have gleamed under the Egyptian sun. Ancient texts described it as a lightning bolt petrified into stone, a man-made beacon visible for miles across the desert. This was not merely a tomb, it was a statement of divine power carved into the landscape. The scale of its construction is almost incomprehensible. It is composed of an estimated 2.3 million individual stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. That is more stone than exists in all the churches and cathedrals built in England since the time of Christ. How did a Bronze Age society achieve such a feat? The theories are as grand as the pyramid itself. Some propose a single, massive ramp stretching out into the desert, growing longer and taller as the pyramid rose. Others suggest a more ingenious internal spiral ramp, a corkscrew road hidden within the monument's own growing walls, allowing workers to haul stones from the inside. Its purpose was dual, a perfect fusion of the earthly and the celestial. It served as the eternal resting place for the pharaoh Khufu, a fortress for his journey to the afterlife. But its design suggests a far greater ambition. The pyramid is aligned with the cardinal points with an accuracy that baffles modern surveyors. Its sides face true north, south, east, and west with a margin of error of just a fraction of a single degree. This was not just a building, it was a gateway, an instrument perhaps designed to channel cosmic energies or to physically launch the soul of the king directly to the stars. Why would a civilization invest such immense resources into a single structure? The answer lies in the very stones themselves, a testament to a belief that humanity could build its own pathway to the heavens. Across the ocean, another civilization echoed this celestial ambition on an equally staggering scale. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan is the Colossus of the Americas, a mountain of earth and stone that dominates the Valley of Mexico. You do not simply look at this pyramid, you feel its presence, a silent, overwhelming force that has watched over the abandoned city for nearly 2,000 years. Its construction was a project of centuries, not decades. Archaeologists have uncovered that it was built in distinct phases, each new layer enveloping the last like a series of nesting boxes, each generation adding to the sacred weight of the place. The final form is a monument of almost brutal power, rising over 200 feet high with a base that dwarfs even the Great Pyramid of Giza in its sheer footprint. But its power is not just in its size, it is in its alignment. The entire city of Teotihuacan and the Pyramid of the Sun at its heart is precisely oriented. Its front staircase points directly toward the setting sun on specific sacred days, and the main avenue below, the Street of the Dead, aligns with the Pleiades star cluster. This was a city engineered as a terrestrial map of the heavens. The mysteries, however, extend deep into the earth. Beneath the pyramid, a secret tunnel was discovered, a narrow passage leading down into the darkness. It ends in a cloverleaf-shaped chamber, a cavernous space directly under the pyramid's very center. What was its purpose? Was it a royal tomb that was never used, a sacred creation cave symbolizing the womb of the earth, or a reservoir for some primordial energy? No one knows. This profound uncertainty is compounded by the greatest puzzle of all. We do not know who built Teotihuacan. The city was already ancient and abandoned by the time the Aztecs found it, naming it the place where men become gods. Its original founders left no written records, no king lists, no declarations of their own identity. They simply built one of the largest cities in the ancient world, crowned it with this artificial mountain, and then vanished, leaving only their monumental questions behind. What drove them to disappear, and what secrets did they take with them into the earth? While the identity of Teotihuacan's builders remains a ghost in the machine, another culture left no doubt about who they were building for. In the sun-baked plains of ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians constructed their own stairway to the divine, the great ziggurat of Ur. This was not a tomb for a king, but a dwelling place for a god, a colossal structure dedicated to Nana, the powerful moon god. Its form was a stark departure from the smooth, piercing peaks of Egypt, built instead as a massive, stepped pyramid of 3 colossal tiers, each level painted a different symbolic color. The core of this mountain was humble mud brick, the very earth of the land itself, but its exterior was a breathtaking spectacle of baked bricks, fired in kilns to a deep, fiery red and set in shimmering bitumen. This created a gleaming, dark facade that would have reflected the desert sun and the pale light of the moon god it honored. The entire structure was a cosmic engine. A single, triple staircase rose up its northern face, converging at a monumental gateway. This was not a path for common people, but a processional route for priests alone. At the summit, high above the mortal world, stood a sacred shrine, the god's earthly home. The ziggurat's purpose was to bridge the immense gap between heaven and earth, a literal and spiritual axis mundi where the divine could descend and humanity could ascend, at least through its intermediaries. This sacred mountain was so vital to the identity of the city that even after centuries of decline, it was resurrected. The Babylonian king Nabonidus, a passionate antiquarian, undertook a massive reconstruction project over 2,500 years ago, restoring the crumbling edifice to its former glory. He left inscriptions detailing his work, a testament to the enduring power this artificial peak held over the human imagination, a beacon of faith rebuilt for a new age. The ziggurat was the heart of the city, a constant, towering reminder that the entire community lived under the watchful eye of their celestial patron. From the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, we travel to the cool, green landscape of southern England, where a different kind of artificial mountain rises from the earth. Silbury Hill is a perfect, grass-covered cone of such geometric precision it seems almost unnatural. This is not a pyramid of stone, but a colossal mound built entirely from chalk and clay, the very bones of the English countryside. It stands 130 feet tall, making it the largest prehistoric man-made mound in all of Europe. To build it, ancient laborers moved an estimated 500,000 tons of material, mostly by hand, using antler picks and woven baskets. The scale of this communal effort is staggering, a project that would have consumed the labor of generations. But the true mystery of Silbury Hill is not its size but its purpose. What could possibly justify such an immense and focused expenditure of human energy? The most persistent legend claims it is the burial mound of a mythical King Sil, seated on a golden horse. Yet, every time archaeologists have tunneled into its core, they have found no chamber, no bones, no treasure. The hill appears to be solid, a mountain with no secret heart. This emptiness has fueled other theories. Perhaps it was a giant territorial marker, a statement of power and ownership visible for miles across the rolling plains. Or maybe its purpose was more spiritual, a vast platform for rituals, a stage where priests could stand closer to the sky. The hill's construction reveals an obsession with stability and permanence. Its engineers layered chalk and clay with the care of master masons, creating a durable, draining structure that has resisted erosion for over 4,000 years. They were not just piling up dirt, they were building a permanent feature into the landscape, something meant to last forever. So we are left with a perfect, empty monument. A mountain of effort with no clear reason for existing. Was it a tomb for a king who never was, a symbol for a territory long forgotten, or an altar for rituals we can no longer comprehend? Silbury Hill gives no answers, standing in silent, stubborn mystery as one of Britain's greatest and most beautiful archaeological puzzles. But not all artificial mountains were built for gods or cosmic alignment. Some were monuments to mortal men who dreamed of immortality. In the bustling city of Halicarnassus, a tomb was constructed so grand, so audacious, that its name would echo through the ages, becoming the very word for a monumental resting place, a mausoleum. This was the tomb of Mausolus, a Persian satrap who ruled with the ambition of a king. He and his wife Artemisia commissioned a structure that would defy time itself, a final testament to their power and legacy. The building was a masterpiece of fusion, a deliberate blending of Greek, Egyptian, and Near Eastern architectural styles. Its base was a massive rectangular podium of marble, reminiscent of a stepped pyramid. Rising from this foundation was a colonnade of 36 slender Ionic columns, a distinctly Greek feature, creating a graceful, open level. Crowning this was a stepped pyramid, a clear nod to the tombs of the pharaohs, and at its very summit stood a colossal statue of Mausolus and Artemisia riding in a chariot, pulling them symbolically towards the heavens. The entire structure was over 130 feet tall, a gleaming white mountain of marble visible from the sea, yet its true magnificence lay in its details. The mausoleum was adorned with a breathtaking array of sculptural friezes and freestanding statues, crafted by the most renowned Greek sculptors of the age. These were not mere decorations, they were epic stories carved in stone, depicting scenes of gods and heroes, of centaurs and amazons, all rendered with a dynamic, lifelike energy that made the stone seem to breathe. For over 16 centuries, this artificial mountain stood as one of the undisputed wonders of the ancient world. Its end did not come from human hands, but from the slow, grinding power of the earth itself. A series of devastating earthquakes over many years gradually shook the great structure to its core, toppling the columns and sending the marble chariot crashing to the ground. By the 15th century, the once glorious monument was a ruin, its stones later repurposed by Crusader knights to build a fortress. The mausoleum is gone, yet its name and its legend are immortal, a permanent reminder of one man's colossal desire to be remembered. Far to the south of Egypt, a rival kingdom built its own forest of stone peaks. The Nubian rulers of the Kingdom of Kush erected over 200 pyramids at Meroe, a royal necropolis that presents a startling and elegant departure from the Egyptian model. These are not the vast, broad-shouldered monuments of Giza, but sharp, slender spires reaching for the sky. Their angles are steep, their bases remarkably narrow, creating a skyline of concentrated, needle-like points that give the desert horizon a jagged, dramatic silhouette. This was the final resting place for the kings and queens of a powerful and independent African empire, a civilization that both admired and fiercely rivaled its northern neighbor. The relationship between Kush and Egypt was a complex dance of cultural exchange and military conflict. For a time, the Kushite pharaohs even ruled Egypt itself, establishing the 25th dynasty. They absorbed Egyptian gods' artistic styles and the very idea of pyramid building, but they were not mere imitators. When they returned to their homeland and built their own necropolis at Meroe, they refined the pyramid into a distinctly Nubian form, a symbol of their own unique identity and power. The steep angles and smaller footprints were not just an aesthetic choice, they were a practical and profound reinterpretation of a sacred tradition. Unlike the largely sealed and hidden chambers of the Great Pyramid, the Meroe pyramids featured small offering chapels built directly against their eastern faces, decorated with intricate carvings that depicted the rulers in the presence of the gods. These reliefs show a fascinating blend of Egyptian motifs with distinctly African features, local deities, and scenes of Meroitic life, telling their own story. The archaeological work at Meroe is a continuous revelation. For decades, the internal structures of these pyramids remained a mystery, with many believed to have been looted in antiquity. But modern excavations are uncovering a different story. Teams are now finding intact burial chambers beneath the pyramids, chambers that robbers missed. Within these sealed spaces, archaeologists are discovering delicate gold jewelry, finely crafted pottery, and the remains of bows and quivers, all speaking to the wealth and warrior culture of the Kushite elite. Each new discovery peels back another layer, revealing a kingdom that was a major power in the ancient world, a sophisticated culture that mastered the Nile and created its own breathtaking range of artificial mountains. What other secrets are still hidden beneath the sands, waiting to tell the full story of these formidable kings and queens? This same drive to shape the earth for the divine and the royal appeared simultaneously across the ancient world, a global phenomenon of staggering ambition. In China, the ultimate artificial mountain remains sealed, a sleeping giant. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, is a colossal, unexcavated burial mound that history describes as an entire microcosm of the universe. Ancient texts recount rivers of flowing mercury and a ceiling inlaid with pearls to represent the stars, all protected by ingenious booby traps. The emperor's fear of death and his obsession with immortality fueled a project of unimaginable scale. Guarding the approach to this subterranean palace is his now famous terracotta army, a vast legion of over 8,000 unique soldiers, chariots, and horses, each one crafted with individual features. This was just the outer perimeter of his necropolis, a mere hint at the wonders and potential dangers that lie within the untouched, grass-covered pyramid at its heart. The Chinese government, cautious of both the technological challenges and the historical accounts of toxic mercury, has so far chosen to let the emperor rest, leaving his greatest monument as the world's most tantalizing archaeological mystery. While China's mountain sleeps, on the Mediterranean island of Sardinia stands a structure so alien to its landscape it seems to have been dropped from another time. Monte de Coddi is a breathtaking anomaly, a massive trapezoidal stone platform accessed by a long, sloping ramp. Built over 4,000 years ago, it resembles a Mesopotamian ziggurat so closely that its existence feels impossible, a piece of the ancient Near East stranded in Europe. Its purpose is shrouded in mystery, but evidence points to it being a colossal altar. Archaeologists have found a sacrificial stone table at its summit, along with remnants of offerings and a complex of religious buildings at its base. Was it the work of seafaring traders who brought the ziggurat concept from distant lands, or an independent, parallel invention by the island's enigmatic Oziri culture? Monte de Coddi stands alone, a unique architectural experiment that defies simple categorization and speaks to the unpredictable spread of the mountain-building idea. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the foundations of Mesoamerican civilization were being laid with another, even older, artificial peak. The Great Pyramid of La Venta, built by the Olmecs, is considered by many to be the earliest pyramid in the region, the prototype for all that would follow at Teotihuacan and beyond. Located in the swampy lowlands of Mexico, this complex was not a city, but a sacred ceremonial center, an island of spiritual power. The pyramid itself is a colossal, fluted cone, an ancient volcano sculpted from earth and clay. Its form is not sharply geometric but organic, a man-made echo of the natural mountains that surrounded it. This was the heart of Olmec culture, a place of immense stone heads depicting powerful rulers and elaborate jade offerings buried as gifts to the gods. The Olmecs, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, established the template, proving that the human impulse to build a sacred mountain was alive and well in the Americas over 3,000 years ago, setting the stage for the civilizations that would later reach for the sky. The impulse to build a cosmic axis found one of its most breathtaking expressions in the humid jungles of Cambodia. Angkor Wat is not merely a temple, it is a universe rendered in stone. This colossal complex, originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, was conceived as a terrestrial replica of the cosmic order, a sacred diagram made walkable. Its central cluster of 5 iconic towers does not simply decorate the skyline, it embodies the sacred Mount Meru, the mythical axis of the Hindu cosmos, home of the gods. Surrounding this central mountain are a series of concentric galleries and courtyards, representing the mountain ranges that ring the cosmic center, and the entire temple is enclosed by a massive moat over 3 miles long, symbolizing the primordial ocean at the edge of the world. To walk from the outer walls toward the central sanctuary is to journey symbolically from the mundane world into the divine realm. The sheer scale of its construction is a monument to human devotion. It is the largest religious monument ever built, using an estimated 5 to 10 million sandstone blocks, each one quarried from a mountain over 25 miles away and transported along a network of canals. The logistical genius required for this project in the 12th century is almost as staggering as the spiritual vision behind it. This vision is carved into every surface. The walls of the outer gallery are covered with over 1,200 square meters of the most exquisite bas-reliefs in the world. These are not simple decorations, they are epic narratives etched into stone, depicting intricate scenes from Hindu mythology like the churning of the ocean of milk, a cosmic battle between gods and demons. The level of detail is so fine that you can see the individual expressions on the faces of thousands of carved figures, each one telling a small part of a much larger story. But the genius of Angkor Wat extends deep into the earth. The temple's magnificent moat was not just symbolic, it was the heart of a sophisticated hydrological system. The Khmer engineers mastered the monsoon, creating a vast network of reservoirs and canals that controlled flooding, stored water for the dry season, and stabilized the sandy ground upon which this stone mountain was built. The entire complex was a machine for living in harmony with the gods and the elements, a perfect fusion of spiritual cosmology and practical engineering. How many generations of artists and laborers dedicated their lives to realizing this single, unified vision of the cosmos? And what did they believe would happen when this model universe was finally complete? The legends of the Mayan world speak of a pyramid conjured from the earth by magic. At Uxmal, the Pyramid of the Magician rises with a startling silhouette, its base a soft oval rather than a sharp rectangle, and its western staircase climbing at a heart-stopping, near-vertical angle. This unique form is central to its myth, a story whispered for over 1,000 years. It is said the pyramid was built in a single night by a dwarf magician, born from a turtle egg, who challenged the city's ruler to a contest of power. The king, scoffing at the dwarf, demanded he construct a taller building than any in the city before the next sunrise. As the legend goes, the dwarf used his supernatural powers to command the stones, and by morning, this impossible mountain stood complete, securing his victory and his rule. While the truth of its construction involved generations of labor, the myth captures the awe this structure inspired, a feat so grand it seemed to defy the very laws of nature. This sense of otherworldly power is magnified by the pyramid's deep connection to the cosmos. The entire structure is a precise astronomical instrument. Its main stairway is aligned to face the setting sun at the summer solstice, and on that day, the dying light perfectly frames the western staircase, illuminating the path to the summit. But the true secret of the Pyramid of the Magician lies not in a single temple at its peak, but in 5. Like a series of nested, sacred boxes, the pyramid we see today is merely the outer shell. Archaeologists have discovered that it was built in 5 distinct phases, each new layer completely enveloping the previous temple. This practice, known as architectural superimposition, was a common Mayan tradition. Rather than destroying an old sacred site, they would build a new, larger mountain directly over it, preserving the power of the old while amplifying it with the new. To stand before this pyramid is to look at a timeline of belief frozen in stone. The earliest temples, now buried deep within the core, were simple structures. With each new layer, the architecture became more elaborate, the symbolism more complex. The current crowning temple, with its grand doorway shaped like the gaping mouth of the rain god Chok, is simply the latest skin on an ancient, growing being. This layering represents a profound worldview, a belief that sacred spaces accumulated power over time. Each new construction was an act of reverence, a way of honoring the past by building upon it, quite literally creating a mountain of history and devotion. What rituals were performed in those inner, hidden chambers that we will never see, and what prayers are sealed forever within the heart of this magical hill? Across the Mississippi River from modern St. Louis, a different kind of pyramid once dominated the landscape. Monk's Mound at Cahokia is the largest pre-Columbian earthwork in North America, a colossal, flat-topped earthen pyramid that served as the central pivot of a sprawling city. This was not a stone spire pointing to the heavens, but a vast terraced platform of packed earth, a mountain built to support an entire community's spiritual and political life. Its construction was a slow, deliberate process spanning centuries, not the project of a single ruler but the accumulated labor of generations. The mound grew in distinct stages, each new layer of clay and soil carefully engineered and compacted, rising to a final height of 100 feet. At its summit, covering an area larger than a football field, stood a massive wooden structure, the grand residence of the city's paramount chief. From this elevated perch, the ruler could look down upon the entire city, a vast urban center of tens of thousands of people, with over 100 other smaller mounds dotting the landscape. This was not just a home, it was the ultimate symbol of authority, a constant physical reminder of the social order. But Monk's Mound was more than a royal acropolis, it was a stage for the entire community. The great open plaza at its base was designed for vast public gatherings. Here, citizens would witness ceremonies that reinforced the chief's connection to the spiritual world, rituals that likely involved music, dance, and offerings to the gods. The mound itself was a physical manifestation of their worldview, a axis mundi connecting the underworld, the earthly plane, and the celestial realm. The ruler, living at its peak, was the intermediary between all three. Why would a society invest so much collective effort into a single, massive platform of dirt? The answer lies in the power of place. Monk's Mound was the beating heart of Cahokia, the fixed point around which everything else revolved, proving that the impulse to build a sacred mountain was alive and thriving in the heart of ancient North America. While the Kassites remain a shadowy dynasty in the popular imagination, their ambition burned as brightly as any. In the heart of what is now Iraq, the great ziggurat of Kur-Kurgaltsu stands as a testament to their brief but brilliant moment in the sun. This king, Kur-Kurgaltsu I, founded an entirely new city and crowned it with this colossal artificial mountain, a deliberate act to carve his name and his people's identity into the very landscape of Babylonia. The structure was a declaration, a statement that the Kassites, once viewed as outsiders from the Zagros Mountains, were now the legitimate rulers of this ancient land. It was dedicated to Enlil, the supreme god of the Mesopotamian pantheon, the lord of the wind and the air. By building a home for Enlil, the Kassites were not just honoring a deity, they were aligning themselves with the ultimate source of cosmic authority, claiming their divine right to rule. Today, the ziggurat presents a striking image. Its core is remarkably well preserved, a massive, multi-tiered mountain of sun-dried mud brick that has hardened over the millennia into a substance as tough as concrete. You can still walk around its vast base and feel the immense scale of its footprint, but to understand its original glory, you must look closer. Scattered around the site and still clinging to parts of the structure are the remnants of its fiery skin, bricks that were meticulously baked in kilns and then set in place with bitumen. These were not the humble earth bricks of the core. These were gleaming, engineered facades, creating a shimmering, dark exterior that would have captured the light of the sun and the moon. This mountain was not meant to blend in. It was designed to dazzle, a beacon of Kassite power visible across the flat plains. The city of Kuragалтsu itself was short-lived, eventually abandoned as political fortunes shifted. Yet the ziggurat endured, its empty, weathered core a silent monument to a kingdom that dared to build its own mountain to reach the gods and secure its place in history. The desert coast of Peru holds a sprawling metropolis of mud. At Tucumán, a vast complex of 26 major adobe pyramids rises from the arid plains, a silent city built not of stone but of sun-dried earth. The largest of these is Huaca, a monumental structure that holds a staggering title, the longest pyramid in the world. This is not a single, sharp peak, but an immense, rambling mountain of brick that stretches for nearly 700 meters, more than the length of 6 football fields placed end to end. Its construction was a continuous process of accretion and renewal, a testament to a site that remained sacred for over 500 years. The Lambayeque culture, also known as the Sican, began building here around 1,100 years ago. They crafted millions of adobe bricks, each one stamped with the unique mark of the community that made it, and piled them high to create these colossal platforms. At the summit of these pyramids, they built elite residential compounds and temples, places where rulers could commune with the gods and oversee their domain. The entire complex was a spiritual and administrative capital, its power radiating across the valley. But the story of Tucumán does not end with its founders. Long after the Lambayeque culture declined, new peoples arrived and saw the same sacred power in these earthen mountains. The Chimu Empire conquered the area and continued to use and expand the site, adding their own architectural flourishes. Later still, the mighty Incas incorporated Tucumán into their vast empire, building a sun temple on one of the principal pyramids. This layering of cultures, each building upon the sacred ground of the last, makes Tucumán a unique palimpsest of Andean history, one mountain serving many masters over the centuries. The origin of this sacred place is itself woven into myth. The legend speaks of Nalamp, a heroic figure who arrived from the sea on a balsa wood raft. He was a bringer of civilization who founded the Lambayeque dynasty and established their first capital. The story says that upon his death, he grew feathers and flew away, transforming into a god. This founding myth, passed down through generations, provided a divine justification for the rule of the elite who commissioned these colossal pyramids. To stand before Huaca is to confront a mountain born from myth, expanded by kings, and sanctified by centuries of unwavering belief. What profound connection did each successive culture feel to this place that they all chose to add their own chapter to its ever-growing story? Deep within the Cambodian jungle, a pyramid of a different character breaks the green horizon. This is Prasat Thom at Ko Ker, a monument born from a single king's radical ambition. For a brief but brilliant period in the 10th century, the entire Khmer Empire pivoted from the grand complex of Angkor to this remote site, establishing a new capital under King Jayavarman IV. He did not merely build another temple, he constructed a statement. Prasat Thom is a stark departure from the sprawling, horizontal cosmology of Angkor Wat. It is a single, vertical thrust of power, a 7-tiered pyramid that climbs nearly 40 meters straight toward the sky. Its design is almost brutally simple, a steep staircase of sandstone tiers that draws the eye irresistibly upward. Each level is a distinct step, a giant staircase leading to a summit that once held a massive stone linga, the powerful symbol of the Hindu god Shiva. This was not a temple designed for leisurely circumambulation. It was a direct ascent, a focused pathway for the king to commune with the divine. Why would an empire so deeply invested in Angkor suddenly abandon it for a new, isolated capital? The theories are as compelling as the pyramid itself. Some historians believe it was a strategic move to control richer timber and iron ore resources in the north. Others see it as a deeply personal decision, a king's desire to escape the powerful priestly families and establish traditions of Angkor, to create a fresh spiritual center under his sole authority. The architecture supports this idea of a sharp break. The style at Koh Ker is distinct, with deeply carved niches and a preference for dramatic monolithic sculpture. The most famous artifact from this period is the immense statue of the kneeling Hanuman, a demonstration of the scale and power of the art produced here. Yet, as suddenly as it rose, Koh Ker was abandoned. After just 2 decades as the capital, the next king moved the court back to Angkor, leaving Prasat Tom and its surrounding city to be slowly consumed by the jungle. This short, intense burst of creativity makes Koh Ker one of archaeology's great what-if stories. What kind of empire would the Khmer have become if this bold, vertical vision had endured, and what other wonders remain hidden beneath the roots of the waiting trees? In the heart of Rome, a pyramid stands as a stark reminder of an empire's voracious appetite for foreign culture. The Pyramid of Cestius is a startling sight, its sharp, needle-like profile and steeply angled sides looking more like a piece of Nubia than a Roman monument. This was the final resting place of Gaius Cestius, a wealthy magistrate who died around 2,000 years ago. His tomb is a direct and deliberate imitation of the pyramids he would have seen in the conquered lands of Kush, a fashionable tribute to an exotic style that captivated the Roman elite. Unlike the sprawling earthen mounds of other cultures, this was a personal statement of wealth and worldliness, a permanent piece of foreign grandeur transplanted into the Roman cityscape. The pyramid's survival is a story of pure practicality. Centuries after its construction, the emperors Aurelian and Probus built a massive defensive wall around Rome to protect the city from barbarian invasions. The pyramid, built from brick-faced concrete and sheathed in gleaming white marble, was already a sturdy, solid structure. Rather than demolish it, the Roman engineers simply incorporated it into the new fortifications, turning a tomb into a bastion. Its sharp angles became part of the city's defensive line, a seamless fusion of funerary art and military architecture. Because it became a functional part of the wall, it was maintained and repaired over the centuries, escaping the fate of so many other ancient monuments that were quarried for their stone. Today, it stands as one of the best-preserved ancient buildings in all of Rome, a silent, white peak that has witnessed the endless transformation of the city around it. How many other tombs can claim to have served as a vital part of a city's defenses for over 1,000 years? Its original purpose so perfectly eclipsed by sheer utility. Deep within the Guatemalan jungle, a lost city sleeps beneath a blanket of roots and vines. El Mirador was the New York of the pre-classic Maya world, a sprawling metropolis that reached its peak over 2,000 years ago, long before other famous Maya sites like Tikal even existed. At its heart stands the colossal El Tiger complex, a man-made mountain so vast that its base covers more area than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is not a single, sharp spire, but a sprawling acropolis of platforms and plazas crowned by a towering central pyramid. To stand before it is to witness the raw, ambitious dawn of a civilization, a testament to the power of the first Maya kings who unified the region under their rule. The sheer volume of earth and stone moved to create El Tiger is almost beyond comprehension, representing a communal effort on a scale that would not be seen again in the Maya world for centuries. This was the cradle of Maya statehood, the place where kingship, writing, and monumental architecture first coalesced into the culture we recognize today. Yet reaching this foundational site is a pilgrimage in itself. There are no paved roads leading to El Mirador. The journey requires a multi-day trek through the dense, animal-rich rainforest of the Patane Basin, or a costly charter flight in a small plane. This extreme remoteness has protected the city for millennia, but it has also left its secrets largely untouched by modern archaeology. The jungle guards its mysteries fiercely, with massive stone structures still shrouded in vegetation, their facades waiting to be fully revealed. What drove the Maya to build such an immense city in such an unforgiving environment? And what caused them to eventually abandon it, leaving this titanic mountain to be swallowed by the waiting green silence? Ireland's green hills hold a different kind of power. The Mound of the Hostages at the Hill of Tara is a small, unassuming earthen mound, but within its quiet bulk lies the heart of Irish myth and kingship. This is a Neolithic passage tomb older than the pyramids of Egypt, built over 5,000 years ago. Its construction was a sacred act, a piling of earth and stone to create a permanent doorway to the otherworld. A narrow, low passage lined with standing stones leads deep into the mound, ending in a small, dark chamber. This was not a tomb for a single chieftain, but a communal resting place for the revered dead, their cremated bones placed within this earthen womb for centuries. The artifacts discovered here speak of a deep and complex spiritual life. Archaeologists uncovered polished stone axes, elegant bone pins, and stunning decorative beads that had traveled from distant shores, all placed as grave goods to accompany the dead on their journey. But the true genius of this artificial mountain is written in the stars and the sunrise. The tomb's passage is precisely aligned so that the rising sun on the mornings around the festival of Samhain, what we now call Halloween, illuminates the inner chamber. On those threshold days between the end of the harvest and the start of winter, when the veil between the worlds was believed to be at its thinnest, the sun's rays would pierce the darkness, symbolically uniting the world of the living with the realm of the ancestors and the gods. This was more than a calendar, it was a cosmic event engineered into the landscape. Centuries after the tomb was built, its power was not forgotten. The Hill of Tara became the legendary seat of the High Kings of Ireland, and this ancient mound was incorporated into their royal enclosure. The Mound of the Hostages became the very site of their inauguration, a direct physical link to the ancestral powers of the land. To become king was to step onto this sacred ground, to connect your rule to the eternal cycle of the sun and the blessings of the deep past. How many kings stood upon that mound, feeling the weight of that ancient alignment as they prepared to lead their people into a new era? The silence of Teotihuacan has been broken not by shovels but by subatomic particles. In a stunning technological feat, researchers have peered deep inside the pyramid of the sun using muon tomography, a method that uses cosmic rays to create a three-dimensional image of dense structures. It is like taking an X-ray of the entire mountain. What they found confirmed the whispers of legends. Deep within the pyramid's core, beneath the very center of its immense weight, the scans revealed a large, hidden chamber measuring over 30 feet across. This was not a simple construction void. It is a deliberate, sealed space, a secret room hidden for nearly 2,000 years, but the discoveries grew even more strange. In a tunnel system beneath the pyramid, archaeologists found something that defied simple explanation: significant quantities of liquid mercury. This was not a natural occurrence. In the ancient world, mercury was a rare and magical substance, shimmering, heavy, and lethally beautiful. Its presence here points to something profoundly ceremonial. What could this toxic, liquid metal have symbolized to the people of Teotihuacan? Some scholars believe it represented a sacred river or a lake in the underworld, a shimmering, symbolic body of water for the dead to cross. Others suggest its reflective surface was meant to mimic the night sky, creating a dark mirror for celestial divination. The combination of the hidden chamber and the mercury points toward a single, breathtaking possibility. We may be looking at the long-lost tomb of a Teotihuacan ruler, a royal burial chamber sealed with both stone and potent ritual. The mercury could have served as a spiritual barrier, a poisonous moat to guard the ruler's eternal sleep, or as a symbolic conduit to the otherworld. For a civilization that left no written records, these non-invasive discoveries are like finding the first pages of a lost book. They suggest that the Pyramid of the Sun was far more than a cosmic landmark. It was likely the beating heart of a death cult, a machine for transformation where a king, or perhaps a line of kings, was laid to rest in a chamber designed to replicate the cosmos, surrounded by a river of shimmering, dangerous magic. The mountain is no longer just an empty shell. We now know something is waiting inside. The question is no longer if the pyramid holds a secret, but who or what is resting in that dark, mercury-guarded space. Even the Great Pyramid's known chambers are architectural marvels that deepen its mystery. The Grand Gallery is no simple corridor. It is a breathtaking, soaring space, a steeply ascending tunnel with a corbelled roof that climbs over 28 feet high, creating a powerful, almost overwhelming sense of ascent. Its walls are perfectly smooth, its construction so precise that it feels more like a ceremonial pathway than a functional one. This was the final leg of the journey for the pharaoh's funeral procession, a grand staircase leading his soul upward. Below it lies the queen's chamber, a misnamed room that was likely never intended for a queen. Its most enigmatic feature is a niche in the wall and two narrow, mysterious shafts that run diagonally through the pyramid's core. For over a century, these shafts were thought to be sealed dead ends until a robotic camera was sent up one, discovering a small stone door with copper handles. Beyond it was another, similar door. What purpose did these tiny, inaccessible tunnels serve? Some believe they were ventilation shafts, but their precise alignment suggests something more. They point directly towards specific stars, Sirius and the constellation Orion, stars deeply associated with the gods Isis and Osiris. They may have been symbolic pathways designed not for the living, but for the pharaoh's spirit to travel directly to the imperishable stars. Yet the pyramid's greatest secrets may still be hidden. In recent years, an international team of scientists used cosmic ray muon detectors to peer deep into the stone, a method that sees through hundreds of feet of solid rock. Their scans revealed something astonishing, a massive void located directly above the Grand Gallery. This is not a small crack or a construction gap. This hidden space is over 100 feet long, a cavernous chamber or perhaps a series of chambers that has been completely sealed off since the pyramid was built. Its existence was entirely unknown to archaeology. What is inside this void? The theories are as thrilling as the discovery itself. Some engineers propose it is a structural feature, a series of relieving chambers designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid away from the Grand Gallery below, preventing it from collapsing under the mountain of stone. But its enormous size has led to more tantalizing ideas. Could it be a hidden repository, a sealed archive containing the actual burial goods of Khufu, left undisturbed by the tomb robbers who emptied the known chambers? Or does it hold something even more profound, perhaps ritual objects or texts that explain the pyramid's true purpose and the advanced knowledge of its builders? Another, smaller void was also detected near the pyramid's north face, adding to the puzzle. The scientific quest to explore these spaces is now a delicate dance of technology and ethics. How do you peer inside a 4,500-year-old treasure without damaging it? Researchers are developing ever smaller and more agile robots, hoping to one day drill a tiny borehole, just a few centimeters wide, to send a fiber optic camera through. They stand on the threshold of a revelation, poised to look into a room that no human eyes have seen for millennia. The Great Pyramid, long thought to be an open book, has proven it still holds its greatest chapters sealed in darkness. What awaits discovery in that silent, empty space above the Grand Gallery? And will it finally reveal the mind of the architect who dared to build a mountain? The stone itself seems to pulse with a raw, untamed energy at Khmer. The artifacts unearthed here are not the serene, idealized gods of Angkor, but powerful entities captured in moments of explosive action. The most iconic examples are the monumental sculptures of mythical creatures like the Garuda, a part man, part bird being. These are not mere statues, they are forces of nature rendered in sandstone. The Khmer Garuda is a study in muscular tension, its wings straining as if ready to launch from the temple wall, its face a mask of fierce concentration. This dynamic style extends to every carving. Human figures are depicted with heavier, more robust proportions, their movements more dramatic and less graceful than the classic Angkor aesthetic. It feels less like a refinement of an old tradition and more like a deliberate, radical break from it. This unique artistic voice fuels the theory that King Jayavarman IV was not just moving his capital, he was attempting to forge a new state religion. By establishing Khmer, he could centralize power, sidestepping the entrenched priestly families and their established rituals at Angkor. He filled his new city with a distinct, powerful iconography that was uniquely his own, creating a visual language meant to reinforce his personal authority and his direct connection to the gods, particularly Shiva. This was intended to be a more potent, more focused spiritual center, a place where the king's power was as immediate and overwhelming as the art he commissioned. So why was this bold vision abandoned after only 2 decades? The answer is likely a combination of practical necessity and the inertia of tradition. When Jayavarman IV died, his successor may have faced immense political pressure to return to the ancestral heartland at Angkor, where the infrastructure, the economy, and the spiritual life of the empire were deeply rooted. The sheer logistical effort of maintaining a remote capital, coupled with the pull of the old, established power base, probably proved too strong. The grand experiment was over. The jungle was allowed to reclaim the pyramids and the sprawling city, leaving its powerful, unfinished story to be whispered by the stones. What might the Khmer Empire have become if this fierce, vertical vision had taken permanent root? The sophisticated engineering of Silbury Hill extends far beyond its visible form. This artificial mountain rises from a carefully managed waterscape, a testament to its builders' profound understanding of the land. A deep, wide ditch originally encircled the mound, fed by natural springs, creating a shimmering moat that would have reflected its perfect shape. This was not a simple trench, it was a hydraulic system designed to control groundwater and stabilize the chalk and clay structure, preventing erosion and collapse. The hill was an island, a sacred form rising from ritual waters, a clear separation between the mundane world and this man-made peak. The various attempts to uncover its secret have each left their own mark on its history. In 1776, the Duke of Northumberland financed a vertical shaft to be dug straight down from the summit, a brutal assault driven by a belief in hidden treasure. His miners found nothing but compacted chalk and sarsen stones. A century later, a horizontal tunnel was driven in from the side, again revealing no central chamber, only more meticulously layered material. These early excavations were acts of vandalism, driven by greed rather than curiosity, and they nearly caused the summit to collapse. Modern archaeology takes a far more delicate approach. Careful analysis of the construction layers tells a different story, one of patient, generational effort. The hill was not built in a single campaign, but in a series of distinct phases over perhaps 100 years. Each new layer was a fresh commitment, a new generation adding to the sacred weight of the monument. The materials themselves were sourced with intention, different types of chalk and clay brought from specific locations, arranged in a complex, reinforcing pattern. This was not a haphazard pile of dirt. It was a carefully engineered structure meant to last for millennia. What does this long-term, communal project tell us about the society that built it? They were clearly organized, stable, and deeply connected to this specific place. Their monument required no king's tomb, no treasure hoard. Its value was in the act of its creation itself, a permanent testament to collective belief and identity, written in the very soil of the land they called home. The artistic legacy of the mausoleum did not end with its collapse. Its scattered stones became a quarry of inspiration for generations of Greek and Roman artists. The sculptural friezes that adorned its various levels were revolutionary, depicting a monumental battle between the Greeks and the Amazons with a raw, chaotic energy that was entirely new. The figures were not static, they were captured in mid-action, their muscles straining, their faces contorted with effort and emotion. This dynamic style, full of dramatic movement and deep undercutting to create strong shadows, became a defining influence on the later Hellenistic period, pushing classical art toward greater realism and theatricality. Even more iconic were the colossal freestanding statues that populated the rooftop and the stepped terraces. The crowning chariot group with Mausolus and Artemisia was the most famous, but the entire monument was a gallery of sculpture featuring life-sized portraits, majestic lions, and other mythical beasts. These were not mere decorations, they were an integral part of the architectural story, blending seamlessly with the structure to create a single, unified work of art. The mausoleum's true end came not from a single cataclysm, but from a slow grinding down by nature and man. A series of powerful earthquakes beginning in the medieval period progressively shook the stone joints loose, toppling the colonnades and sending the great marble chariot crashing to the ground. For centuries, the magnificent ruin lay as a field of broken marble, a local wonder. Then, in the 15th century, the Knights of St. John of Rhodes arrived. Needing fortifications to guard against a growing Ottoman Empire, they saw the mausoleum's site not as a sacred tomb, but as a convenient quarry. They systematically dismantled the remaining structure, burning the exquisite marble blocks in their kilns to make lime for mortar and using the harder stone for the walls of their castle at Bodrum. It was an act of utilitarian destruction that erased the physical mountain from the landscape. The final chapter of its rediscovery began in the 19th century. A British diplomat, Lord Stratford de Redcliffe, recognized fragments of the famous frieze built into the knight's castle walls. This led to a formal excavation by the British Museum, which secured the remaining sculptures. Today, the magnificent friezes and the towering, reconstructed statues of Mausolus and Artemisia stand in London, silent witnesses to a wonder that was first built, then broken, and finally scattered across the world. The society that raised this earthen mountain was anything but simple. Cahokia was a bustling, densely packed city, home to tens of thousands of people at its peak around the year 1050. This was not a loose collection of villages, but a highly stratified, complex society with a powerful ruling class living atop Monk's Mound, literally looking down upon a vast population of farmers, artisans, and laborers. The chief residing in the grand building at the summit was more than a political leader. He was a spiritual nexus, his authority derived from a direct connection to the celestial and underworld forces. This social hierarchy is etched into the landscape itself. Beyond the chief's mound, the city was dotted with over 100 other earthworks. Smaller, conical mounds served as tombs for the noble elite, while other platform mounds supported the homes of important families or temples for specific rituals. Every mound's size and location was a physical map of the city's social and spiritual order. At the foot of Monk's Mound lay the Grand Plaza, a vast, leveled expanse covering nearly 50 acres. This was the living, breathing heart of the city, a stage for the communal life that bound this society together. Imagine this space during a major ceremony filled with thousands of people. The air would have been thick with the smoke of ritual fires, the sound of drums and chanting, and the sight of elaborate processions moving between the mounds. Here, the ruler would demonstrate his power, presiding over events that unified the entire community. The cosmic order was reinforced by precise engineering. Just to the west of the Grand Plaza, the Cahokians built a series of massive wooden circles, now called woodhenges. These were giant solar calendars constructed from tall cedar posts set deep into the earth. On the equinoxes and solstices, a priest or astronomer standing at the center of the circle would see the sun rise directly over a specific post, marking the turning of the seasons with breathtaking accuracy. This was a society that synchronized its civic life with the cosmos, using these calendars to dictate the timing of planting, harvests, and the great ceremonies in the plaza below. The scale of public life here was immense, supported by evidence of large-scale feasting. Archaeologists have uncovered enormous pits filled with the bones of thousands of deer and dogs, consumed in communal meals that would have fed multitudes. The debris from these feasts, mixed with broken pottery from special vessels, paints a picture of a city capable of mobilizing and feeding huge numbers of people for ritual and political gatherings. This was a display of the chief's wealth and generosity, a way to reward followers and display his power. Cahokia's influence stretched far beyond its own borders. Excavations have uncovered raw materials and finished goods from all across North America. There was copper from the Great Lakes region, sheets of shimmering mica from the Appalachians, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, and distinctive chert for tools from the Ozarks. This was not just trade, it was a testament to Cahokia's role as a cosmopolitan hub, a magnet for people, ideas, and wealth. It was the first major metropolitan center in North America, a vibrant, complex, and powerful civilization that thrived for centuries, all organized around the spiritual and political gravity of its central, man-made mountain. The ziggurat was far more than a static monument. It was the pulsating heart of a living, breathing ritual system. Each year, the entire city's fate hinged on a single, spectacular ceremony, the New Year's festival known as the Akitu. This was not a simple celebration, it was a cosmic reset, a ritual designed to maintain the delicate balance between the human world and the divine. At the climax of the festival, the king himself would ascend the towering triple staircase, a tiny figure against the immense red and black brick facade. His journey to the summit was a symbolic reenactment of the god's own journey, a climb from the earthly realm to the celestial. There, in the sacred shrine, he would participate in the most profound rite of all, a sacred marriage. He would unite with a high priestess representing the goddess Inanna, a ritual union believed to channel divine power directly into the land. This act was not about personal romance, it was a matter of state security. The fertility of the soil, the abundance of the harvest, and the very flow of the rivers were thought to depend on this ritual's success. The king's ability to commune with the goddess in this way was the ultimate source of his political legitimacy, proving he was the true intermediary chosen by the gods to rule. This deep, sacred connection is why the ziggurat became such a potent symbol for later conquerors. Centuries after the city of Ur had faded from power, the great Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II turned his attention to the crumbling mound. He did not see a ruin, he saw an opportunity. By undertaking a massive and highly publicized restoration of the ziggurat, he was doing more than just repairing old bricks. He was stitching his own name into the fabric of history, physically connecting his reign to the ancient, hallowed traditions of Sumer. He was claiming the same divine mandate that the original builders held, using the restored artificial mountain as a colossal billboard to advertise his piety and his right to rule all of Mesopotamia. The mountain was not just a bridge to the gods, it was a ladder for ambitious kings to climb into legend. These stone walls are not silent. They hum with the footsteps of gods and the marching of armies, a grand visual symphony carved for the soul's ascent. To walk the outer gallery of Angkor Wat is to embark on a spiritual pilgrimage before you ever climb a single step toward the central towers. The bas-reliefs here are a sacred text in sandstone, an epic narrative stretching over 1,200 square meters. Each panel is a chapter designed to prepare the pilgrim, to impart divine knowledge and cosmic history as they circle the temple, moving closer to the heart of the mountain. The journey often begins with the most monumental scene, the churning of the ocean of milk. This is not a simple story. It is the Hindu creation myth rendered in breathtaking detail. Here you see two opposing forces, the Deva gods and the Asura demons, working in a tense cosmic cooperation. They have wrapped the serpent king, Vasuki, around the central mountain, Mount Mandara, and they are pulling him back and forth, using the mountain as a giant churning stick. Their goal is to churn the primordial ocean, extracting the elixir of immortality. The entire panel is a masterpiece of tension and motion. You can see the strain on the faces of 92 demons and 88 gods as they heave on the serpent's body. Below them, the ocean teems with life, churned up by this incredible effort. This scene is a profound lesson for any pilgrim. It teaches that creation itself requires both opposing and complementary forces, that great rewards demand immense struggle, and that order emerges from chaos through disciplined collective action. It sets the stage for the entire spiritual journey, reminding you that enlightenment is not given, but earned through a great churning of the soul. Further along the gallery, the stone suddenly shifts from myth to living history. Here you encounter the grand procession of King Suryavarman II, the very monarch who commissioned this mountain temple. This is a sprawling, vivid portrait of his court and his military, a permanent record of his earthly power and his divine right to rule. The king himself is depicted at the center, larger than life, standing beneath 15 tiers of royal parasols. He is a figure of immense calm and authority, holding a sacred sword. Surrounding him is the chaos and glory of his kingdom. You see his generals mounted on mighty war elephants, their howdahs bristling with soldiers. You see rank upon rank of infantrymen marching in perfect unison, each one carrying a distinct shield and weapon. The detail is so precise that you can distinguish the different ethnic groups in his army, from the bare-chested Khmer warriors to the bearded Cham mercenaries with their distinctive head wraps. Behind the military might comes the civil administration, a river of priests, court officials, and palace women, all moving in a stately procession. This panel serves a crucial dual purpose. It is a declaration of the king's temporal power, a warning to any enemy who might see the carving, but for the pilgrim it is also a symbolic guide. The king is shown as the ideal devotee, the one who has marshaled all the resources of his kingdom, both military and spiritual, to build this pathway to the gods. His earthly procession mirrors the pilgrim's own spiritual procession toward enlightenment. Completing this sacred circuit, you then encounter scenes from the great Hindu epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Here, the hero Rama battles the demon king Ravana to rescue his beloved Sita. In another panel, you witness the great war of Kurukshetra, where the god Krishna delivers the sublime teachings of the Bhagavad Gita to the warrior Arjuna. These are not just entertaining stories, they are moral and philosophical treatises on duty, righteousness, and the nature of reality. They present the pilgrim with complex dilemmas and divine solutions, preparing their mind for the higher truths awaiting them at the summit. Every single figure in these galleries, from the lowest foot soldier to the highest god, was originally adorned with paint and even gold leaf. The entire walkway was once a riot of color, a blazing, illuminated manuscript under the open sky. The act of walking this path, of absorbing these stories, was a form of meditation. By the time a pilgrim had completed this circuit and began the steep climb up the temple's levels, they were spiritually prepared. They had witnessed the creation of the cosmos, the power of a god-king, and the eternal struggles between good and evil. They had been purified by narrative. The carvings were the final, essential preparation for standing in the shadow of the central shrine, having been guided step by symbolic step from the outer world of illusion to the inner sanctum of divine reality. What would it feel like to complete that walk, to have these epic tales fresh in your mind, as you finally looked upon the sacred image of Vishnu at the mountain's peak? Ancient historian Sima Qian wrote of a terrifying subterranean world, a sealed kingdom guarded by mechanical death. he described the emperor's tomb chamber as a microcosm of his empire, complete with a miniature bronze landscape of China. The great rivers of his domain, the Yangtze and the Yellow River, were not carved in stone, but were instead flowing channels of shimmering, liquid mercury, perpetually circulated by some ingenious hidden mechanism. The ceiling above was inlaid with pearls and gems to represent the constellations, creating a perfect eternal night sky below which the emperor's body would rest, surrounded by his palaces and officials. To protect this cosmic replica from violation, artisans were ordered to install automatic crossbows, their triggers set to fire poisoned bolts at any intruder who broke the seals and entered the sacred passageways. For centuries, this was dismissed as a fanciful legend, a ghost story written long after the emperor's death. Then, modern science intervened. Geochemical surveys of the soil over the tomb mound have repeatedly detected significantly elevated levels of mercury, far above normal background readings. The pattern of this contamination even vaguely mirrors the historical course of the major rivers in eastern China. Scientific evidence now suggests that Sima Qian's incredible account was not mere myth. The mercury rivers might be real. This revelation transforms the ethical dilemma of excavation from a technical challenge into a potentially lethal one. How could archaeologists safely breach a tomb that might be filled with toxic, vaporizing mercury, not to mention the still possible threat of ancient, cunningly designed traps? The Chinese government has chosen a path of extreme caution, prioritizing preservation over discovery for now. They remember the fate of many Egyptian tombs, opened hastily only to have priceless artifacts crumble to dust upon contact with the modern air. The potential for catastrophic damage, both to the historical record and to human life, is simply too great. So the Emperor's Mountain sleeps on, a silent, grass-covered pyramid guarding what may be the greatest undisturbed treasure in all of human history, a testament to one man's terrifying ambition to rule not just a nation, but the universe itself for all eternity. These pyramids were crowned with a feature found nowhere else in the world. At their summits, they placed elaborate capstones of polished sandstone, often carved with a radiant sun disk. This was a powerful symbol of rebirth, a final, brilliant flare of solar energy at the peak of the funerary mountain, guiding the ruler's soul into the cycle of eternity. This focus on a unique solar afterlife was a deliberate departure from Egyptian traditions, a declaration of a distinct Kushite theology. The spiritual life of these monuments was centered on the offering chapels built directly into their eastern bases. Unlike the sealed, hidden chambers of Giza, these were open, accessible spaces for the living to commune with the dead. Their walls were covered in carved reliefs that presented the deceased not as distant gods, but as active participants in a vibrant afterlife. You would see them seated before lavish feasts, receiving offerings of food and drink from their descendants, or standing triumphant in the presence of deities, their individual features and regalia carved with clear local pride. The most striking figures to emerge from these carvings are the Kandaks, the ruling queens of Meroe. These were not mere consorts or regents, they were sovereigns in their own right, pharaohs who commanded armies and commissioned their own pyramids. One of the most formidable was Ammonionas. When the Roman legions under Emperor Augustus pushed south from Egypt, it was Queen Ammonionas who led the Kushite counter-offensive. Historical accounts describe her as a fierce, one-eyed warrior queen who personally led her armies into battle, capturing several Roman cities and even hauling away bronze statues of Augustus as trophies. She fought the world's greatest superpower to a standstill, eventually negotiating a highly favorable peace treaty that preserved Kush's independence and wealth for centuries. Her pyramid at Meroe, though now without its capstone, stands as a silent testament to her power. The story of these queens fundamentally reshapes our understanding of the ancient world. Here, in the heart of Africa, a civilization flourished where women could wield ultimate political and military authority. building their own mountains to secure their legacy alongside the greatest kings. What other stories of these indomitable Kandaks are still waiting to be fully deciphered on the walls of their chapels, and what does their enduring power say about the society that revered them? Monte Ducati's isolation only deepens its mystery. This massive stone platform with its long access ramp feels utterly alien to the Sardinian landscape, a piece of architectural driftwood from a distant shore. The central question is whether its form was borrowed or born locally. Did seafaring traders from the eastern Mediterranean bring the blueprint for a ziggurat with them, planting this seed of a sacred mountain on European soil? Or did the island's own Osiri culture, in a moment of parallel genius, arrive at the same monumental concept entirely on their own? The evidence is tantalizingly ambiguous. Trade links across the Mediterranean were active, and the resemblance to early Mesopotamian structures is uncanny. Yet no other monument like it exists in the region, suggesting it might have been a brilliant, one-of-a-kind experiment, a local answer to that universal human call to build high and meet the gods. The rituals performed here were far from abstract. At the summit, archaeologists uncovered a powerful and chilling relic, a large trapezoidal altar stone stained a deep, permanent red. This color came from ochre, a sacred pigment symbolizing life, death, and rebirth. The stone itself was a slaughtering table, its surface grooved to channel the blood of sacrificial offerings. The bones of sheep, cattle, and pigs were found scattered around the site, evidence of the communal feasts that followed the sacred killings. You can almost hear the echoes of those ancient ceremonies, the chanting priests, the lowing of the terrified animals, and the stark, vivid red of the blood against the pale stone under the wide Sardinian sky. This was not a quiet place of meditation, but a stage for visceral, elemental rites meant to ensure fertility, appease the gods, and bind the community together through shared, powerful experience. What drove these people to create such a specific and imposing stage for their most sacred acts? And what did they believe descended that long ramp to receive their offerings? The colossal stone heads of La Venta are unlike anything else in the ancient world. Carved from immense blocks of solid basalt, each one depicts a distinct individual with a heavy, serene face, a determined mouth, and a unique helmet-like headdress. These are portraits of powerful Olmec rulers, each visage weighing up to 20 tons. The sheer effort to create and transport them is a story in itself. The basalt was quarried from the Tuxtla Mountains over 50 miles away, and then somehow moved through swampy, difficult terrain without the use of the wheel or draft animals. Scholars believe they were floated on massive rafts along rivers, a breathtaking logistical feat for a society over 3,000 years ago. These heads were not hidden away but placed with great care in the ceremonial center, eternal guardians of the sacred mountain. They were the faces of the living god-kings who mediated between the people and the spirit world, but the rulers were also shown in another, more intimate form. The so-called altars of La Venta are not small tables but massive, throne-like blocks of stone. On the front of these altars, a detailed scene is carved in deep relief. It shows a ruler seated in a niche, often interpreted as the mouth of a cave, holding a rope that wraps around the sides of the stone to bind captive figures. This powerful imagery connects the ruler directly to the underworld, depicting his authority over both human enemies and supernatural forces. These altars were likely seats of power, places where the ruler would manifest his divine connection during public ceremonies. The spiritual wealth of La Venta extended deep underground, where the Olmecs buried astonishing offerings. They carefully arranged pavements of green serpentine stone, creating shimmering mosaics of abstract, mask-like faces. Over these, they piled layers of colorful clay before burying them forever, perhaps as gifts to an earth deity. In other elaborate caches, they placed exquisite figurines and polished celts made of precious jade. For the Olmecs, jade was more than a beautiful stone. It was a sacred substance symbolizing water, fertility, and life itself. These offerings were not casually discarded. They were meticulously positioned in patterns that suggest a sophisticated understanding of cosmology, an attempt to harmonize their man-made mountain with the fundamental order of the universe. This entire sacred landscape was laid out with incredible precision. The core ceremonial precinct of La Venta is aligned precisely 8 degrees west of north. This was not a random orientation. It is thought to mirror a significant celestial event, or perhaps the sacred mountain of Cerro del Santuario, which lies on that same axis in the distance. The entire complex, from the placement of the massive heads to the buried offerings, was a carefully choreographed diagram of the Olmec cosmos. At the center of it all stood the Great Pyramid itself. Today, it appears as a large, fluted cone, but its original form was likely even more dramatic. The theory is compelling that this entire structure was a giant effigy of a sacred volcano. The Olmec world was dominated by the active volcanoes of the Tuxtlas, mountains that breathed fire and smoke, sources of both destruction and the fertile soil that sustained life. By building their own volcano, the Olmec sought to harness that raw, creative power. They created a permanent, controlled source of sacred energy at the heart of their world. This pyramid was not just a platform for rituals, it was the ritual itself, a man-made mountain that made the gods present and the king their living representative. The pyramid's facade is a living, breathing entity, its entire western face transformed into a colossal mask of the rain god Chok. This is the art of architectural masking, where the building itself becomes a divine portrait. The great staircase forms the god's nose, a long, hooked proboscis that descends toward the earth, while the doorways at the summit become his wide, gaping mouth, the entrance to the spiritual realm. His piercing, stone eyes stare out across the land, a permanent, watchful presence carved into the very mountain he inhabits. Every element of the structure is subsumed into this sacred identity, blurring the line between architecture and idol. To stand before it is not merely to look at a temple, but to stand in the presence of a god made manifest in stone and earth. This divine facade is not merely decorative, it is a functional part of a celestial machine. The entire pyramid is a masterwork of alignment, its western staircase serving as a giant gnomon for the solar calendar. On the evening of the summer solstice, the sun does not set behind the pyramid, but directly along the line of this steep central stairway. The dying light perfectly frames the steps, creating a path of fire that appears to flow directly from the heavens into the heart of the mountain, illuminating the doorway that is Chok's mouth. This was no accident. The Maya engineers who designed this understood the sun's yearly journey with breathtaking precision. They carved a mountain that would, on the most critical day of the agricultural year, capture the sun's full power and channel it directly to the rain god. This was a plea and a promise, a way of ensuring that the life-giving rains would follow the sun's intense zenith, that the god of storms would open his mouth and breathe life into the world below. How many generations of priests watched that perfect alignment, seeing the confirmation of their cosmic order etched in light upon the stones? And what did they believe was being communicated between the earth and the sky in that fleeting, golden moment? This triadic pattern was no random arrangement. At El Mirador, the entire city was a sacred geometry, with the El Tiger complex forming one apex of a vast cosmological triangle. The main pyramid was flanked by 2 smaller but still monumental structures, creating a unified group that represented a foundational belief. This triad was a physical manifestation of the 3 hearthstones of creation, the stones set by the gods at the dawn of time to establish the cosmic order and hold up the sky. To stand in the plaza between these 3 peaks was to stand at the very center of the Maya universe, but the true wonder of these pyramids was their skin. In their original glory, they were not bare stone, but canvases for the most ambitious art in the ancient Maya world. The facades were covered in vast polychrome stucco friezes, intricate sculptures molded from lime plaster and painted in vibrant shades of red, blue, and yellow. These were not small decorations, they were monumental narratives, some stretching over 30 feet wide, depicting scenes from the Popol Vuh, the Maya epic of creation. You would have seen the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, outwitting the lords of the underworld in a ballgame of life and death. You might have glimpsed the maize god, resurrected and triumphant, symbolizing the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that governed all of existence. These friezes were a public library of myth, a way for everyone to see and understand the stories that gave their world meaning. Today, these masterpieces face a relentless enemy. The jungle humidity, torrential rains, and invasive plant roots constantly threaten to dissolve these fragile stucco surfaces back into the earth from which they came. Conservation teams now work against time, carefully excavating the friezes only to immediately rebury them in protective layers of geotextile and sand, a process known as protective backfilling. It is a heartbreaking choice to uncover a masterpiece only to hide it again, but it is the only way to preserve it for a future with better technology. Other sections are sheltered under vast, tent-like structures that shield them from the elements while allowing archaeologists to continue their painstaking work of stabilization. Every day is a battle, a race to document and protect these stories before the jungle reclaims its own. What profound truths about the dawn of the world are still hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the day we can safely let them see the sun once more. This ancient mound was far more than a simple tomb. It was a gateway to the age of myths. The stories whispered that the Mound of the Hostages was the burial place of the Tuatha De Danann, the magical, god-like people who were said to have ruled Ireland before the arrival of humans. They were not mere legends, but a divine race of skilled artisans and powerful druids who possessed 4 great treasures, including the unbreakable spear of Lug and the stone of destiny that would cry out under the true king. When they were finally defeated, the myths say they did not die, but retreated into the hollow hills, the Shia, becoming the fairy folk of later folklore. The Mound of the Hostages was considered one of these primary entrances to their luminous otherworld, a parallel dimension of eternal youth and beauty that existed just beyond the veil of our own. Its precise solar alignment was not just a calendar event, it was the moment when that veil grew thin, when the door to the land of the gods was briefly opened. This connection transformed the entire hill of Tara into something far greater than a royal seat. It became a sacred landscape, a nexus of cosmic and political power. The mound's location was not accidental. It sat at the very heart of the royal enclosure, surrounded by other earthworks with names that resonate with power, like the Forad, the royal seat, and the Lia Fail, the stone of destiny. This was a deliberate, symbolic geography. To become the High King of Ireland, a ruler had to undergo a sacred inauguration ceremony upon this very mound. He would physically stand upon the portal to the otherworld, symbolically marrying the goddess of the land herself, often embodied as the powerful sovereignty goddess Medibi or Matcha. This sacred marriage was the true source of his authority. It proved he had the blessing of the Tuatha De Danann, that he was the legitimate intermediary who could ensure the fertility of the soil, the fairness of the laws, and the victory of his armies. His power flowed not from human decree, but from the ancient magical pact sealed within that earthen mountain. The king did not just rule the people, he was the guardian of the threshold, the one who maintained the balance between the world of mortals and the timeless realm of the gods. What would it have felt like for a new king standing on that mound at dawn on Samhain, knowing that beneath his feet slept the ancient gods and that the rising sun was illuminating a path only he was meant to walk? That very act of restoration by the Kassites reveals a profound cultural negotiation. These were not native Mesopotamians, but a people from the rugged Zagros Mountains who arrived as conquerors yet chose to build their legitimacy not by erasing the past but by embracing it. They adopted the Akkadian language for their official inscriptions and worshipped the traditional Mesopotamian gods like Enlil, for whom their great ziggurat was built. Yet they never fully erased their own identity. Their names remained distinctly Kassite, and subtle traces of their mountain heritage persisted in their art and their rule, creating a unique fusion in the heart of Babylonia. This was not a brutal replacement, but a careful integration, a way of saying they belonged to this ancient land while still honoring their own origins. The evidence for their sophisticated statecraft lies just beside the ziggurat in the sprawling palace complex. This was not merely a royal residence, it was an administrative hub and a diplomatic headquarters. Within its many rooms, archaeologists uncovered a treasure that speaks volumes about the Kassite's place in the world, a collection of cuneiform letters. These were not local messages, but international correspondence, part of the famed Amarna letters exchanged between the great kings of the Bronze Age. Here, in the shadow of their artificial mountain, the Kassite rulers wrote to the pharaohs of Egypt as equals, addressing them as brother. They negotiated marriages, exchanged lavish gifts of gold, lapis lazuli, and chariots, and discussed the complex politics of the region. This reveals a kingdom fully enmeshed in a global network of trade and power, a major player whose influence stretched from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. The very stones of the palace tell a story of cosmopolitan taste. Fragments of vibrant blue faience tiles and glass vessels have been found, materials and technologies that were cutting edge for their time, likely acquired or inspired through these long-distance connections. The Kassites were not isolated upstarts, they were savvy diplomats who used their strategic position and their monumental architecture to claim a seat at the table of international superpowers. Their ziggurat, then, was more than a religious statement. It was the central pillar of a kingdom that successfully wove its own thread into the rich and ancient tapestry of Mesopotamia, proving that a mountain could be a bridge not only to the gods but to the entire world. The end of Tukhum arrived in flames. Archaeologists have uncovered a layer of ash and charcoal across the summit of Huaca Laga, evidence of a massive, deliberate fire. This was not an accidental blaze or an enemy attack, but a ritual termination, a ceremonial closing of the sacred mountain. The people who had maintained this place for 500 years chose to burn the temples atop their own pyramids, a final, sacred act to deconsecrate the site and release its power back to the gods. They were not destroying their home, they were performing a funeral for an entire city, sealing its spiritual energy before they departed. What profound belief would compel a civilization to set fire to its own heart, and where did the people go after they walked away from the smoldering ruins? The silence did not last long. A new power, the Chimu Empire, swept into the valley from the south. They saw the blackened pyramids not as ruins but as a prize. The Chimu were master engineers and administrators, and they recognized the strategic and spiritual value of this place. They did not rebuild the burned temples in the old Lambayeque style. Instead, they constructed their own distinctive additions, high-walled ciudadelas or citadels, directly onto the existing platforms. They were grafting their own identity onto the ancient, sacred bones of the mountain, claiming its legacy for their own empire. Centuries later, the cycle repeated itself. The Inca arrived, the final imperial power to be drawn to this magnetic site. They, too, built upon Huaca Laga, constructing a sun temple, an Inti-Huatana, on its summit, aligning the sacred site with their own state religion. For the Inca, these ancient mounds were Huaca's sacred places imbued with spiritual force that needed to be incorporated into their cosmic order. Each new culture saw the same potent power in these earthen forms, each adding a new layer to the story without ever erasing the one before. Over the centuries, as memory of the original builders faded, legends grew to explain the impossible scale of these pyramids. The local people came to believe they were the work of the Nyamlap dynasty, the mythical founders from the sea, or even more ancient beings. The most persistent legend said the mounds were not built by human hands at all, but by a race of giants who moved the earth in a single night. This was a common human response to monuments that dwarfed their own capabilities, to attribute them to gods or giants, because the alternative, that ordinary people could achieve such things, was almost too incredible to believe. The story of Tukulum is a chronicle written not in paper, but in layers of ash, adobe, and legend, a testament to the enduring power of a mountain long after its first builders have turned to dust. The Pyramid of Cestius was a direct product of its time, a fashionable wave of Egyptomania that swept through Rome after its legions conquered the land of the Nile. Following the defeat of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, Egypt became a Roman province, and its treasures, obelisks, and exotic gods flooded into the capital. For a wealthy Roman like Gaius Cestius, building a pyramid was the ultimate statement of sophistication, a way to align himself with the mystique and ancient power of this new imperial possession. It was personal branding in monumental form. The inscriptions carved into its marble face tell a detailed story of his life and career, revealing he was a praetor, a tribune of the people, and one of the 7 epulones, priests responsible for organizing sacred feasts. This was not a tomb for an emperor, but for a member of the affluent elite who wanted his public service and social standing remembered for eternity, carved onto a structure that echoed the grandeur of the pharaohs. This personal ambition, however, was eventually eclipsed by the monument's sheer endurance. It became a permanent fixture in the Roman landscape, its stark, white form captivating artists and poets centuries later. The Romantic poets Percy Bysshe Shelley and John Keats, who are both buried in the Protestant cemetery that lies in the pyramid's shadow, found profound inspiration in its silent presence. Shelley described it in his poem Adonais as a sharp and slender pyramid that pierced the intense Italian sky, a symbol of timeless beauty and melancholy reflection. Keats, in his final days, would have seen it from his window, a constant geometric reminder of ancient death and the enduring power of art. How did a Roman magistrate's trendy tomb transform into a timeless muse, its original purpose forgotten only to be reborn as a symbol for a new age of artists seeking the eternal? This sprawling metropolis was a machine of cosmic harmony. The city's grid was not a random arrangement of streets, but a precise alignment to celestial bodies, with the Street of the Dead serving as its central axis. This broad avenue runs for over a mile, pointing directly toward the sacred Cerro Gordo mountain on the northern horizon. Flanking this processional way are more than 2,000 single-story residential compounds, their identical, windowless exteriors hiding vibrant interior courtyards where the city's diverse population lived and worked. This uniformity was a powerful social statement, suggesting a society where collective identity may have been valued above individual display. At the southern end of the avenue lies the Ciudadela, a vast sunken square that could hold nearly 100,000 people. This was not a fortress but a ceremonial enclosure dominated by the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Its facade is a breathtaking mosaic of carved stone, depicting the undulating bodies of the feathered serpent god, Quetzalcoatl, and a goggle-eyed storm god, their heads emerging from a sea of stone petals. This temple was the political and spiritual anchor of the city, a place of immense power and, as recent discoveries suggest, of staggering human sacrifice. Mirroring the Pyramid of the Sun at the avenue's heart is the Pyramid of the Moon, a perfectly proportioned structure that seems to echo the shape of the sacred Cerro Gordo mountain behind it. While smaller in volume, its summit is the same height as the Pyramid of the Suns, a deliberate design creating a perfect visual balance. From its peak, you look directly down the entire length of the Street of the Dead, a view that makes the city's grand design breathtakingly clear. This was a landscape engineered to connect the earthly and the divine. The entire city functioned as a single, integrated system. The genius of Teotihuacan extended to its mastery of water, the lifeblood of any civilization. They constructed a complex network of canals and drains that channeled rainwater from the paved plazas and courtyards, diverting it to reservoirs and agricultural fields. They even rerouted the San Juan River to align with the city's grid, forcing a natural force to conform to their cosmic blueprint. This control over water was more than practical. It was sacred, a way of taming the chaotic powers of nature and integrating them into their ordered universe. The sacred power of this place may have originated deep underground. A compelling theory suggests that both the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon were constructed directly over vast natural cave systems. For the people of Mesoamerica, caves were not just geological features. They were entrances to the underworld, sacred spaces known as Chalchutlecu, the wombs of the Earth Mother. These caves were seen as sources of life, fertility, and primordial power. By building their greatest pyramids atop these portals, the Teotihuacanos were not just building toward the sky, they were tapping into the very heart of the planet. They were anchoring their celestial map to the underworld, creating a complete cosmic circuit. The Pyramid of the Sun channeled energy from the Earth's core, while its summit reached for the sun. The city itself became a living entity, a conduit between the world below and the heavens above. A perfect, terrifying, and beautiful machine designed to harness the fundamental forces of the universe. What did they hear whispering up from those dark caves that convinced them to build a mountain atop the opening, and what did they believe would flow back down? The soil beneath Monk's Mound was as engineered as the monument itself. To feed a city of tens of thousands, the Cahokians transformed their landscape into a vast, productive garden. They perfected the cultivation of the three sisters corn, beans, and squash. These crops were a masterwork of natural synergy. The corn stalks provided a living trellis for the climbing bean vines, which in turn fixed essential nitrogen into the soil, fertilizing it for the nutrient-hungry corn. The broad, spiky leaves of the squash plants spread out below, creating a living mulch that suppressed weeds and conserved precious moisture. This agricultural triad provided a complete, sustainable diet, fueling the labor that built the great earthen pyramids. But their genius extended beyond planting. They managed the mighty Mississippi's seasonal floods, using its rich silt to replenish their fields, and they likely constructed a complex of terraces and irrigation channels on the surrounding bluffs, maximizing every inch of arable land. This was not simple farming, it was a form of landscape architecture on a colossal scale. What could have triggered such a sudden, explosive growth from a scattering of villages into a monumental city? Some archaeologists point to a celestial event around the year 1050, a sighting of the Crab Nebula supernova that would have blazed brighter than Venus for weeks. This cosmic phenomenon, coinciding with a period of unusually favorable climate, may have been interpreted as a divine mandate, a signal to unify and build. It might have been the catalyst for a cultural Big Bang, a rapid coalescence of people, belief, and ambition under a powerful new ideology. For centuries, this new way of life thrived. Then, the world they had mastered began to turn against them. The very success of Cahokia may have sown the seeds of its decline. Centuries of intensive farming and tree clearing for construction and fuel led to widespread soil depletion and erosion. The stable, benevolent climate that had blessed their rise shifted, bringing periods of prolonged drought that stressed their agricultural surplus. There is also chilling evidence of increased warfare in the region. Palisade walls were built and rebuilt around the city center, and skeletal remains show signs of traumatic injuries. This was likely a time of social unrest as resources grew scarce and the authority of the chiefs living atop Monk's Mound was challenged. The intricate social contract that had held this vast community together for generations finally frayed. By the 14th century, the great city was largely abandoned. The central power dissolved and the population scattered into smaller, more mobile communities. The people did not vanish, they simply walked away from the mountain they had built, leaving it as a silent, grass-covered giant overlooking the river, a testament to both the breathtaking heights of collective human achievement and its profound fragility. Centuries after its stones were first laid, Angkor Wat underwent a profound transformation of the soul. The great temple mountain, originally consecrated to the Hindu god Vishnu, was gradually embraced by Theravada Buddhism. This was not an act of destruction, but a quiet evolution. The Buddhist faithful did not tear down the magnificent carvings of Hindu gods and epics. Instead, they saw them as earlier expressions of a universal truth, allegorical tales that could be reinterpreted through the lens of Buddha's teachings. The great bas-relief depicting the churning of the ocean of milk became a metaphor for the churning of the human mind, the struggle to extract the nectar of enlightenment from the murky ocean of worldly desire. The entire temple complex was re-envisioned as a representation of Mount Meru in Buddhist cosmology, the cosmic center of all universes. This spiritual shift is etched into the temple's very walls. Throughout the galleries, you can find elegant statues of the Buddha placed respectfully in niches and chapels. The most striking of these is a large, serene Buddha image located in the central tower, a space that once held a statue of Vishnu. This peaceful coexistence of faiths is a testament to the temple's enduring power, its ability to transcend its original purpose and speak to the deepest spiritual yearnings of a new age. This sacred energy has never faded. For over 900 years, Angkor Wat has remained a living, breathing center of pilgrimage. Every day, saffron-robed monks walk its ancient causeways, their quiet chants blending with the whisper of the wind through the stone galleries. Devotees from across Cambodia and the world come to offer prayers, light incense, and feel the profound peace that radiates from this man-made mountain. They are not visiting a museum, but a functioning heart of faith, a place where the divine feels intimately close. Preserving this colossal testament to human devotion is a battle against time, water, and gravity. The jungle is a relentless force, its roots and vines capable of prying apart massive stone blocks. The international effort to save Angkor Wat is one of the largest and most complex conservation projects in history. Teams from dozens of countries work in a delicate partnership, using everything from traditional methods to cutting-edge technology. They carefully map every stone with three-dimensional laser scanners, inject stabilizing grout into crumbling foundations, and painstakingly dismantle and rebuild dangerously leaning sections, all while ensuring the temple remains open for worship and wonder. It is a race against decay, a global commitment to ensure that this stone mountain, born from a king's vision and reborn through the faith of millions, will continue to reach for the heavens for centuries to come. What does it mean for a monument to outlive the civilization that built it, only to find new life and new meaning in the hands of another? Silbury Hill never stood in isolation. It was the gleaming white centerpiece of a sprawling ceremonial landscape, one of the most concentrated and powerful sacred geographies in the ancient world. Just a short walk away lies the West Kennet Long Barrow, a colossal tomb older than the hill itself. This is a house of the ancestors, a long, earthen mound with a stone-lined passage leading to chambers where the bones of the dead were carefully placed over centuries. To stand inside its dark, cool interior is to feel the palpable presence of the deep past, a connection to generations long turned to dust. The barrow is precisely aligned to the midwinter sunset, its entrance capturing the dying light on the shortest day of the year, a symbolic rebirth for the spirits within. Further still, and on a scale that defies belief, are the massive stone circles of Avebury. This was not a neat ring of standing stones, but a gigantic henge, a circular bank and ditch enclosing an area so vast it swallowed an entire village. Within this great enclosure stood multiple stone circles, their rough, towering sarsens forming a complex ritual space unmatched in all of Britain. The entire complex was linked by the River Kennet and a processional avenue of paired standing stones that snaked across the countryside. So what was the relationship between the tomb of the ancestors, the Temple of the Circles, and the empty, perfect cone of Silbury Hill? The leading theory is breathtaking in its scope. These were not separate sites, but components of a single, integrated ritual complex, a sacred machine laid upon the land. The entire valley was a stage for the journey of life, death, and rebirth. Imagine a ceremonial procession beginning at the Long Barrow among the bones of the forefathers. The participants would then move along the avenue, passing into the cosmic theater of the Overbury circles, a place for the living community to gather and for rituals that connected them to the celestial powers. And at the heart of it all, visible from every point, was Silbury Hill. Its brilliant chalk-white surface, likely kept clear of vegetation, would have acted as a colossal beacon, reflecting the moonlight or catching the first and last rays of the sun. It was the man-made mountain, the Axis Mundi, that anchored the entire system. It provided no tomb, no temple, because its purpose was more profound. It was the central symbol of the landscape itself, a permanent, indestructible monument to the collective belief that bound the living, the dead, and the gods into one eternal, sacred cycle. What profound ceremonies unfolded in this vast, open-air cathedral, and what did the people see when they looked upon their gleaming white mountain, knowing it was the one part of their world built entirely by their own hands? The stones of the Great Pyramid whisper a language of numbers. Its builders embedded a staggering level of mathematical precision into its very form, creating a structure that functions as a giant geometric puzzle. Perhaps the most famous example is the subtle incorporation of the pi ratio. If you take the pyramid's original perimeter and divide it by twice its height, the result is a figure incredibly close to pi, the constant that defines the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. This was not a coincidence. It suggests the architects possessed a sophisticated, perhaps symbolic, understanding of this fundamental mathematical principle, encoding it in the relationship between a square base and a pyramidal form. This mathematical genius extends to the pyramid's orientation. Its sides are aligned to the four cardinal directions with an accuracy that borders on the impossible. The north-south axis deviates from true north by just 3/60ths of a single degree. To put that in perspective, this is a finer margin of error than what many modern architects would accept for a large building today. How could a Bronze Age society achieve such a feat without magnetic compasses, which were unknown to them? The answer likely lies in the stars. They probably used a method called circumpolar star alignment, tracking the rotation of a specific star around the celestial pole over the course of a long, clear night to find a fixed true north. The foundation upon which this entire mountain rests is another marvel of precision engineering. The pyramid's base, an area covering over 13 acres, was leveled to within less than an inch. Across a surface larger than 10 football fields, the builders ensured it was almost perfectly flat. They likely achieved this using a network of water-filled trenches, creating a giant level by referencing the calm, flat surface of the water to carefully trim the bedrock foundation to an exact plane. The tools available to them seem almost laughably simple against the scale of their accomplishment. They had copper chisels and saws, stone hammers, and wooden levels. Their primary measuring tool was the royal cubit, a unit of length standardized to a high degree of accuracy. With these basic instruments, they cut, moved, and placed millions of multi-ton blocks with joints so tight that a credit card cannot be slipped between them. This combination of brute force and delicate finesse continues to baffle engineers. Were they using lost tools or techniques we have yet to rediscover? Or did they possess a kind of patient, accumulated knowledge that we, in our rush for technological solutions, have simply forgotten? The pyramid stands not just as a tomb, but as a permanent challenge, a stone question mark demanding to know how its creators saw the world with such perfect geometric clarity. This artificial mountain was a living city in its own right, a hive of activity that never slept. The Great Ziggurat of Ur was not an isolated monument, but the beating economic and administrative heart of the entire region, a holy corporation dedicated to the moon god Nana. An army of priests, scribes, artisans, and farmers worked in its shadow, all bound to the service of the deity who dwelled in the shining shrine at the summit. The high priests held the ultimate authority, interpreting the god's will and overseeing a vast portfolio of lands, workshops, and granaries. They were the CEOs of a divine enterprise, managing assets that would rival any modern multinational. Below them, a legion of specialized priests conducted daily rituals. Some were in charge of the elaborate clothing and feeding of the god's statue, presenting it with 2 lavish meals each day. Others were diviners, skilled in reading the future in the livers of sacrificed sheep or the patterns of oil on water. The temple complex buzzed with the sounds of industry. Scribes sat cross-legged in shaded courtyards, their styluses flying across moist clay tablets. They recorded everything from the delivery of a single lamb to the output of entire weaving workshops. In nearby bakeries, workers shaped thousands of sacred loaves, while brewers fermented vast vats of beer, a staple of both the gods' offerings and the workers' rations. The temple was the largest employer in the city, a divine engine that powered the Sumerian economy. The true voice of this lost world speaks to us from those very clay tablets. Tens of thousands of these cuneiform records have been excavated from the administrative quarters surrounding the ziggurat. They are not epic poems, but the mundane paperwork of a complex society. One tablet might meticulously list the issue of 1 quart of oil and 5 pounds of wool to a singer for a festival. Another records a legal dispute between 2 merchants over a shipment of copper ore, with witnesses named and oaths sworn in the name of Nana. We read receipts for taxes paid in barley and rosters of laborers sent to dredge the city's canals. These everyday documents paint a breathtakingly detailed portrait of a society that was deeply bureaucratic, fiercely litigious, and astonishingly organized. They reveal a world where a farmer could lease a field from the temple for 1/3 of its harvest, and where a woman named Nindoda could file a lawsuit to secure her inheritance. Beyond these administrative lists, the scribes also preserved the soul of their culture. They copied and recopied great literary works like the Epic of Gilgamesh, ensuring its survival for millennia. They wrote hymns praising the ziggurat itself, calling it the house whose foundation is clad in terror, a mountain of lapis lazuli that reached for the heavens. In these texts, the mountain was not just stone and brick, but a living entity that connected the daily grind of the temple baker to the cosmic journey of the moon god. How many lives were spent in service to this single idea, their names and daily struggles now preserved for eternity in lines of dried clay? The emperor's necropolis was a sprawling microcosm of his entire empire, a city of the dead built to serve him for eternity. Beyond the Great Mound, archaeologists have uncovered a constellation of pits and tombs, each revealing a different facet of his terrifying ambition. In one chamber, they found 2 of the most breathtaking bronze artifacts ever unearthed. These were not models, but half-size replicas of imperial chariots, complete with their teams of 4 horses. Every piece was cast in bronze with astonishing precision, from the flexible leather reins and delicate bridle chains to the driver's whip and the canopy that shaded his passenger. The chariots were even painted in vibrant colors and adorned with gold and silver inlays, designed to carry the emperor's soul in splendorous procession through the afterlife. This was the ultimate luxury vehicle for the next world, a testament to the belief that his authority and comfort needed to be perfectly preserved. But the necropolis also held darker secrets. In one pit, the skeletons of 7 young women were discovered, buried with fine jewelry and precious objects. These were likely the emperor's concubines, sacrificed to accompany him into death, their lives extinguished to ensure his pleasure and status would continue. Nearby, another tomb contained the remains of high-ranking officials and generals, the very administrators who had helped him forge a unified China. Their presence was a bureaucratic necessity for the afterlife, ensuring his celestial government would function without interruption. The most chilling discoveries, however, were the mass graves. These were not elaborate tombs, but simple, brutal pits packed with the jumbled skeletons of the laborers who built this impossible complex. Ancient texts recount that after the tomb's completion, the emperor's son and chief minister ordered the execution of all the artisans and workers who had worked on the interior, ensuring the secret mechanisms and hidden treasures would never be revealed. The scale of this sacrifice is almost unimaginable. This entire city of the dead, from the bronze chariots to the bones of the workers, was a single, unified machine. Every element, whether crafted from precious metal or human life, had a designated function in the emperor's grand design. He sought to conquer not just the mortal world, but death itself, building an eternal kingdom where he would rule forever, served by an entire population frozen in time. What did he believe awaited him in that silent, mercury-filled chamber? And was his mountain of death the ultimate act of power, or the final, desperate fear of a man who could control everything except the end? The kingdom's survival depended on its mastery of water. In the remote, dry forests of Khmer, King Jayavarman IV engineered a landscape to defy the seasons, constructing massive reservoirs known as barrays. The largest of these, the Rahul Barray, is a colossal man-made lake stretching over 1,200 meters in length, its earthen banks carefully sculpted to hold back millions of gallons of precious rainwater. This was not a natural feature, but a calculated act of control, a liquid treasury as vital to the city as its stone pyramids. In a climate of intense monsoons followed by long, punishing dry spells, this reservoir was the city's beating heart. It provided drinking water for a large urban population, sustained crops through the arid months, and supplied the countless laborers and artisans building the king's monumental capital. Without this hydraulic feat, the entire ambitious project would have withered and died. The management of this water was the ultimate expression of royal authority. The king, who could command the monsoons to fill his barray and then ration its life-giving contents throughout the year, held a power that felt truly divine. He was not just a political ruler, but a guarantor of life itself, the one who turned a remote, inhospitable site into a thriving imperial center. This control over water became the physical proof of his sacred mandate, a direct and visible demonstration that he could harness the elemental forces of nature for his people. The Rahul Barray was more than a utility, it was a symbolic ocean. Its vast reflective surface mirrored the towering Prasat Tom pyramid, creating a perfect duality of mountain and water, the fundamental pairing of the Hindu cosmos. The pyramid represented the fixed masculine axis of the world, Mount Meru, while the Barray represented the surrounding primordial sea. Together, they formed a complete miniature universe under the king's dominion, a cosmological model made real through sheer engineering will. The water's surface would have shimmered with the inverted image of the pyramid, a visual metaphor for the king's power bridging the earthly and the celestial realms. Why would a king choose such a challenging location for his capital, if not to prove his absolute command over both his people and the very environment? The hydraulic system at Khmer was the true foundation of its brief, brilliant power, a testament to the fact that the greatest artificial mountains could not stand without the silent, engineered seas built to sustain them. The journey to the afterlife for a Kushite royal began deep within the pyramid's heart. Descending a steep staircase, priests would carry the mummified body into a rock-cut chamber hidden beneath the weight of the stone. Unlike the vast, echoing spaces beneath Giza, these burial rooms were intimate and intense, their walls lined with finely dressed sandstone blocks. Here, the ruler was laid to rest upon a wooden bed, their body adorned with the treasures of a kingdom. Golden amulets were placed over their heart, inscribed with spells to protect the soul. Delicate faience shabti figures, miniature servants for the afterlife, stood ready to answer the call for labor in the next world. Finely crafted pottery held offerings of food and wine, and the ruler's personal weapons, a powerful bow and a quiver of arrows, were laid beside them, ensuring their warrior status would continue beyond death. These chambers were not sealed tombs meant for eternity alone, but the starting point of a continuous spiritual dialogue between the living and the dead. This dialogue is written on the walls of the offering chapels built above. The carved reliefs are a vivid guidebook for the soul's journey, a unique blend of borrowed and homegrown beliefs. You see the deceased standing before the classic Egyptian gods, Osiris, the lord of the underworld, and Isis, the Great Mother. They are present, but they share the stage with distinctly Nubian deities. The lion god Apedemak, a uniquely Kushite figure of ferocious power, appears frequently, his snarling head emerging from a temple wall. Most importantly, you see the ruler not as a passive soul being judged, but as a living, active participant in the divine realm. In one scene, they might be shown striding forward, personally presenting offerings to a god, a display of confidence and direct access. In another, they are depicted triumphantly smiting their enemies, a scene that echoes pharaonic art but carries a raw, local energy. This was not a passive hope for salvation, but an active claim to a powerful afterlife. The rituals performed in these chapels were the fuel for this eternal existence. Family members and priests would regularly bring food, pour libations, and recite prayers before these carved scenes, sustaining the soul of the departed. The pyramid was not a sealed monument to a finished life, but a busy portal, a place where the boundary between the worlds was thin and constantly traversed by memory, devotion, and the enduring power of a legacy carved in stone. What did these rulers believe they would become in that next life, armed with their bows and surrounded by their golden charms under the watchful eyes of both Egyptian and Nubian gods? The colossal heads of Laventa were born from a mountain 50 miles away. The basalt for these 20-ton portraits was quarried from the Tuxtla Mountains, a region of ancient volcanoes. Moving these immense blocks of stone without wheels or pack animals was a monumental feat of logistics and will. Scholars believe the Olmecs transported them on massive rafts, floating them along rivers and through swampy mangrove forests, a slow, perilous journey that turned the landscape itself into a highway for their ambition. This was not an isolated society, but the hub of a vast exchange network. Their reach extended far beyond the Mexican heartland. The most brilliant green jade, carved into exquisite celts and delicate figurines, was sourced from the Motagua River Valley in distant Guatemala. They also possessed gleaming mirrors crafted from iron ore, a material whose shimmering, dark surface must have seemed magical, perhaps used by rulers to reflect divine light or to see into other realms. These were not mere luxury goods, they were the essential ingredients of power and ritual, proving the Olmecs were connected to a world much larger than their own ceremonial center. This web of influence is why Laventa is so often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. The ideas forged here at this man-made volcanic mountain rippled outwards for centuries. The Olmec concept of the divine ruler, a man who mediated between the people and the gods, became the blueprint for Maya kings and Zapotec lords. Their practice of building massive ceremonial platforms evolved into the towering stone pyramids of Teotihuacan and Tikal. Even their signature ball game, with its rubber balls and stone courts, became a central ritual across the region. Laventa was a cultural seedbed. Here, in the humid lowlands, a template for civilization was established, a set of spiritual and political ideas so powerful that every major culture that followed would build upon its foundation. What did these later civilizations see when they encountered the abandoned Olmec sites? And how did they recognize the echoes of their own beliefs in those ancient weathered stones? The upper facades of Uxmal shimmer with a tapestry of stone. This is the Puuc style, a pinnacle of Maya architectural elegance that rejected the massive, monolithic blocks of other cities in favor of a brilliant mosaic technique. Builders crafted a veneer of thousands of small, exquisitely cut stones, fitting them together to form intricate geometric patterns and symbolic images across the surfaces of their temples and palaces. You see repeating frets, latticework, and stylized serpents woven into the stone, creating a visual rhythm that feels both mathematically precise and organically alive. The overall effect is one of refined grace, a stark contrast to the raw, imposing power of a pyramid like El Mirador. This delicate artistry was made possible by a revolutionary structural innovation, the boot-shaped vault. Unlike the true arch known to the Romans, the Maya corbelled their vaults by stacking stones, each one projecting slightly inward until the two sides met at the top. The Puk masons perfected this, giving the vault a distinctive, high-ceilinged profile that resembled an upside-down boot. This clever design allowed them to create wider, more stable interior spaces, supporting the heavy, ornate facades above while filling the rooms below with a sense of airy grandeur. How did such a remote city fund this flowering of art and architecture? Uxmal's wealth was not born from conquest, but from cunning control over a scarce and vital resource, water. The entire city was a masterwork of hydrological engineering. Its builders constructed a system of choltuns, bell-shaped underground cisterns, designed to capture and store every precious drop of rainwater during the seasonal downpours. They also sculpted the landscape itself, creating aguadas, large artificial reservoirs that served as the city's liquid lifeblood through the long dry season. This command over water allowed for a stable and surplus agriculture, which in turn supported the skilled artisans and laborers who built the stone mosaics. Uxmal's prosperity was further amplified by its strategic position. It stood as a dominant power in a league of Puk cities, a network of allied states that controlled the low, rolling hills of northwestern Yucatan. Through this alliance, Uxmal likely managed a thriving trade in highly prized commodities, exporting agricultural goods and finely crafted tools made from the local chert, a high-quality stone abundant in the region. The city's elegant buildings are a testament to this economic success, a mountain of artistry built not on plunder, but on the practical genius of water management and the quiet power of commercial exchange. What other secrets of sustainable living are still encoded in the stones of this beautiful, sophisticated city? The vibrant metropolis of El Mirador did not fade slowly into silence. Its end was a sudden, dramatic rupture. Around 150 years after the birth of Christ, this colossal city, along with dozens of other major preclassic centers, was completely abandoned. The Great Pyramids were left to the jungle, their stucco friezes still fresh, their plazas empty. This event, known as the preclassic Maya collapse, is one of the greatest and least understood disasters of the ancient Americas. It challenges everything we thought we knew about the steady march of civilization, proving that a society can reach breathtaking heights only to shatter long before its supposed peak. What could have caused such a widespread failure? The evidence points to a perfect storm of catastrophes, centuries of intensive farming, and the constant demand for timber to burn lime plaster for their monuments had stripped the surrounding forests. This deforestation likely triggered severe soil erosion, leaching the land of its fertility just as the city's population reached its maximum. Then the climate turned against them. Sediment cores from nearby lakes reveal a period of intense, prolonged drought that struck at the very moment the city was most vulnerable. The life-giving rains failed, and the intricate agricultural system that fed tens of thousands of people began to collapse. But nature's assault was only part of the story. The final days of El Mirador were violent. Archaeologists have found that the great causeways, once highways for trade and pilgrimage, were deliberately blocked with walls and palisades. The city was fortifying itself against a desperate enemy, or perhaps turning in on itself. This was not a peaceful departure. It was a frantic, last-ditch effort to survive mounting chaos, a society tearing itself apart as resources vanished and the social contract broke down. The traditional narrative of Maya history describes a steady progression from simple villages to the glorious city-states of the classic period like Tikal and Palenque. The preclassic collapse shatters that simple story. It reveals that the Maya achieved an early, staggering urbanism that then utterly collapsed, a false dawn that was followed by a dark age lasting over a century. The later classic Maya were not the direct heirs to an unbroken line of progress. They were the survivors of a forgotten apocalypse, the ones who rebuilt from the ashes of a world that had already reached for the sky and fallen. What lessons did they learn from the silent, crumbling mountains of their ancestors, and what warnings did those overgrown ruins hold for their own future? When the last citizens of Cahokia walked away from their great earthen mountain, they did not vanish from history. Their legacy flowed into the oral traditions of the Native American peoples who later called this land home. Tribes like the Osage and Quapaw, who have deep ancestral roots in the region, carry stories that seem to echo the memory of that lost city. Their creation narratives speak of a time when their people emerged from a watery underworld, a journey that some scholars believe may symbolically reflect a migration from the great riverine metropolis of Cahokia itself. These are not histories written on paper, but living memories carried in song and story, preserving the spiritual significance of a place long after its builders were gone. For these communities, the mounds were never just piles of earth. They were sacred geography, the work of their own distant ancestors, imbued with a power that demanded respect. Then came a new wave of people with a very different worldview. When European settlers first pushed into the Mississippi Valley and saw Monk's Mound rising from the landscape, their minds could not accept the evidence before their eyes. The scale of the earthworks was so immense, the planning so sophisticated, that it clashed completely with their prejudiced belief that Native Americans were a primitive, nomadic people. They reasoned that such a monumental city must have been built by someone else, by a lost, superior civilization that had been wiped out. This gave rise to one of the most persistent and fanciful myths in American history, the myth of the mound builders. A lost race of giants, or perhaps refugees from the sunken continent of Atlantis, were proposed as the true architects. Others, looking across the Atlantic, attributed the mounds to wandering Vikings, Phoenicians, or even one of the lost tribes of Israel. These theories were not based on archaeology, but on a deep-seated refusal to acknowledge the monumental achievements of indigenous cultures. This myth was used to justify a terrible history. If the Native Americans present in the 18th and 19th centuries were merely squatters who had displaced a more advanced, vanished race, then seizing their land was not an act of injustice but a reclaiming of a lost heritage. The myth of the mound builders became a political tool, an excuse for displacement and genocide, all while the true descendants of Cahokia, people with living traditions connected to the site, were systematically ignored or removed. It took the careful, patient work of archaeologists like Cyrus Thomas in the late 19th century to finally dismantle this fiction. His extensive surveys for the Smithsonian Institution meticulously linked the mounds to the material culture of historic Native American tribes, proving a continuous line of habitation and cultural development. The scientific evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The myth of a lost white race was a comforting lie, while the truth was far more profound. A great indigenous civilization had risen, flourished, and transformed the heart of North America, leaving behind a mountain that stands as a permanent challenge to any simple story of the continent's past. What other truths about our shared history are still waiting to be heard in the stories of the Osage and the Quapaw, and what does Cahokia's silent mound demand that we remember? From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Guatemala, these 50 artificial mountains reveal a pattern etched into the human soul. Cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia with no possibility of contact all arrived at the same monumental idea. They did not copy one another, they answered the same deep, silent call. The pyramid, the ziggurat, the earthen mound, these are not just similar shapes, they are parallel inventions of the human spirit. Why would a Sumerian priest in Mesopotamia and a Maya king in the Yucatan both feel compelled to build a towering staircase to the heavens? The answer lies in the fundamental human experiences shared by every early civilization. Each one looked up at the same night sky, its stars mapping the seasons and telling stories of the gods. They looked out at the same imposing natural mountains, the homes of deities and the sources of life-giving rivers. And they felt the same profound need to make their mark, to create something that would outlast the fleeting span of a single human life. The artificial mountain became the ultimate expression of this shared yearning. For the Egyptians, it was a launch pad for the soul, a smooth, geometric ramp to the stars. For the Mesopotamians, it was a landing pad for the divine, a home where the gods could descend to meet humanity. In the Americas, it was a model of the cosmos itself, a sacred volcano or a mythical peak built to harness the power of creation. In places like Silbury Hill, it was a pure symbol, a mountain of collective effort with no other purpose than to simply be, a permanent testament to a community's identity. The differences are just as telling as the similarities. The choice of material speaks volumes about a culture's environment and priorities. The Egyptians used eternal stone, quarried and dragged across the desert. The Sumerians built with the very earth beneath their feet, fashioning humble mud into a fiery, gleaming facade. The Cahokians packed millions of baskets of soil, creating a vast platform for the living, while the Nubians refined the pyramid into a sharp, elegant spire that was uniquely their own. These variations prove there was no single blueprint passed from hand to hand. This was a universal human solution to a universal human problem: how to connect the earthly and the divine, how to project power across the landscape, and how to etch a civilization's name into the very bones of the planet. This global phenomenon whispers a powerful truth about our species. When humanity first began to build cities, to farm, and to form complex societies, we also began to build mountains. It was an essential part of the recipe for civilization itself. The impulse to reach for the sky, to create a permanent axis in a changing world, is woven into our collective DNA. These structures are not just tombs or temples, they are the birth certificates of human ambition. What does it say about us that this same dream was dreamed simultaneously across the globe? And what might our own modern towers and skyscrapers say to the people of the distant future? These 50 peaks of human ambition form a global constellation of ingenuity. From the mercury-filled tomb of China's first emperor to the silent, empty cone of Silbury Hill, each mountain speaks a distinct language of belief. The Egyptians carved celestial launch pads from stone, while the Sumerians baked the very earth into gleaming stairways for their gods. In the Americas, pyramids became models of sacred volcanoes and maps of the cosmos. And in North America, vast earthen platforms supported entire communities of the living. This was not a single idea spreading, but a universal human impulse flowering independently across the globe. Our ancestors looked at the natural mountains that housed their deities and decided they would build their own. They sought to touch the sky, to commune with the stars, to anchor their power in the landscape, and to leave a mark so permanent it would defy the forgetting of time. These monuments are the ultimate expression of our shared need to connect the earthly and the divine, to project our identity across generations, and to shape the world into a reflection of our deepest beliefs. They are the birth certificates of civilization itself, so we leave you with two questions to ponder. Which of these man-made mountains fascinates you the most, and what modern structures do you think will be the mysterious ruins of the future? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into history's greatest mysteries.